Howdy, folks. Happy Thursday. We are here. We have some things to discuss today. We're going to preview the Tampa Bay Lightning. We're going to talk about the more nominees for the Hockey Hall of Fame and a few other things. But as usual, we get started with the pre-show with Russ, and as usual, we touch on either the NFL or baseball, and we're going to touch on both today.
Yeah, we'll go NFL first. Thought it kind of curious that the NFL not only canceled the Hall of Fame game, which I think is in late August, but also the Hall of Fame ceremony. They canceled all of it. And to me, that doesn't make sense because they originally announced it on the eve of the Super Bowl, right? And again, this is late August. If nothing else, you could do it Zoom style and certainly pull it off and not have a problem. I get why Cooperstown didn't do it because that is something that is absolutely necessary to their lifeblood in that town. I don't think it's the same thing for Canton. I really don't. And
well, I was going to say, and we're going to talk about the Hall of Fame in a little bit. Lanny McDonald, when he announced the selections, did say that they weren't sure about what was going to happen in terms of a ceremony. So I'm not going to criticize the NFL that much about the Hall of Fame ceremonies because they could very, very easily do what baseball is doing and move it to next year.
Okay. But the game, right?
But the game.
It was supposed to be the Steelers and the Cowboys, and they've canceled it. Yep. And finally, and I know I brought this up months ago, and every month I've been saying it to you, finally people have been questioning what is the NFL actually going to do to try and pull off games because we don't even know their plan. Like, they've already had guys basically come up with the virus for just showing up for OTAs, and that's not a lot of guys. So all of a sudden, there's not a lot of confidence in this NFL season starting on time.
Well, I think their plan is they have no plan. I think their plan is we're probably going to play in front of no fans. And, when you're in a training camp, you're isolated. I mean, usually like for example, like the Bills, they do their training camp at St. John Fisher College in near Rochester. And I think they're staying in the dorms there. So, I mean, I would assume that they're going to test everybody.
But we don't know that.
But we don't know it. Yeah, I mean, they haven't come out with a structure. They haven't come out with a hard and fast plan. But I'd be shocked if they delay the season because they don't have the luck. I mean, yes, they can play in all kinds of weather. That's true.
Okay,
but, go ahead.
Here's how uninformed I think the NFL is. So what's being written, Pro Football Talk wrote today that some NFL cities may have a bizarro game day experience with stadiums completely empty on the inside, but thousands congregating in parking lots to tailgate to watch it on TV.
Yeah.
Talk about that while I move.
Well, I mean, and it's funny because put Buffalo in that instance because many people believe that the party outside, the drinking, the barbecuing, I know the people joke about slamming people through tables. All that stuff is more exciting than the game, and that's what a lot of people go for. But the problem is that can very easily spread the disease as much as sitting in the stands next to somebody. So I don't think they're going to allow that.
Why is that idea even out there?
I don't know. That's idiotic. I mean, that's like
I know.
That's like being able to hold protests in a city square or having a political rally in a stadium. It's like both of them are stupid based on what's going on right now in terms of the communicable disease that is going around right now.
Here's one more thing. So Andrew Brandt, who's pretty plugged into the NFL, his tweet is bad. His tweet, and it's not his fault. His tweet basically says, the NFL will do everything it can to trim around the edges, no workouts, training camp, preseason if necessary, to protect the season. Time will tell. Right. Even he has no clue what the NFL is going to do. Right. And they've had months and months and months to do something and tell everybody what they're going to do. And so far, they have nothing.
Honestly, I think they're
These are insiders. They don't know anything.
I think their plan is to barrel right through. That's what I think, which is stupid. But we've never accused the NFL of being smart.
No, that's true. Okay.
You know?
So speaking of not being smart, it looks like the Wilpons are finally going to have to sell the Mets before the end of the year because financially they can't afford it anymore. That is music to most Met fans' ears because we've been waiting for that day. We're not heartless. Look, whatever happened with Bernie Madoff, that's on them because the Yankees didn't have the problem with Madoff because they knew enough to get out. The Mets didn't. They got greedy.
Were they in it at all?
I think a little bit. I think a little at the beginning, and then they got completely out early on because they sensed something or were told something where clearly the Mets went all in, right? But the Mets have done okay since the Madoff days, except for this year. Now all of a sudden it's hitting them hard again, and they cut like everything from SNY, and I mean everything, which is awful. Tons of jobs there, and now we're at a point where they're selling the team in SNY, but there may be entities that don't want SNY and don't care about it. And if that's the case, then that just may go under. That just may be a situation where.
Well, I saw that the price that your long lost relative Steve Cohen was willing to pay for the deal that was in place that ended up getting vacated was, I think, 2.5 or 2.6 billion. And right now the asking price is down to 1.4. Now, I don't know whether that is just the Mets or if it's the Mets and SNY, but when you lose $1.2 billion in your asking price, that's a little bit of a haircut.
A little bit. So, but the interesting thing is, Josh Harris, Howard Blitzer, who own the Sixers and the Devils, seem to be the leading bidders right now at $1.4 billion. And right now they are not including SNY because we know they have their own plans for their own sports network. Right. And while J-Lo and A-Rod and the Vitamin Water guy and whoever else they've suckered in.
The My Pillow guy's got to be in there too, right?
No, he's not. Shut up. Sounds good. At the end of the day, Josh Harris could easily walk away with the Mets, and then who knows what will happen with the other teams, because I think he'll start to sell some of those other entities because that's what he's been in it for this whole time, is to sell. But the Mets now will be an interesting thing because they're a New York market team, and right now with the market being down, this is where a guy like Harris kind of swoops in. While Cohen was originally a guy we looked at, I don't know. I don't know if I completely trust his worth and everything else as the ownership. So believe it or not, Harris may be the best bet. And I know other people are always going to be skeptical, but we'll see. We'll see how it goes. But it's interesting because at least this could be a nice little New Year's Eve present where we find out that, yes, the Mets have been sold, and you could almost tell me it's anybody, Genghis Khan, and I'm probably going to be happy.
Well, like I said, this late bid is going to be the guy, the Untuck-It guy and the My Pillow guy.
I don't think they have the resources, Mike.
Two of the most unpopular people. I mean, if I had $1 for every Untuck-It commercial and My Pillow commercial that I've seen since the beginning of the shutdown, I'd be a millionaire.
You know what? I've not seen any Untuck It. I don't know why. Maybe because I'm not watching NHL Network. I haven't seen one. Where are you seeing them all?
Oh, on Yes Network when I watch.
Oh, on Yes. See, I haven't seen one. Okay.
No. The NHL Network is the Addiction Network,
right?
Or Geico, or the one with the opera singer.
You
know what I'm talking about.
Yeah. I know.
Yeah, which I mean, we're delaying here for a minute because Zach is going to sign on any second. Talk about a narrow advertising campaign. You're trying to find people who have settlements from insurance companies that want their money up front rather than paid over years. And they're basically going to give you a lump sum. That's who they're advertising to. How many people are like that out there? Not many. So it's like,
that's what we think. The courts could be littered with those people. We don't know.
Yeah, but we have to endure these friggin' bad commercials. My God.
Bad commercials have been around since the dawn of time, Mike. I mean, the funniest thing to me is always the Super Bowl, because there's a rule with local networks. The big networks bid and, they take up all the big primetime spots. But then, like after the first I want to say after the kickoff or whatever, you always get like 1 minute of local programming because it's like a law for whatever network has it and whatever local channels they're doing, like if it's NBC. And so like you always see like a bad car commercial and a bad something that are obviously done at a very low cost. And you see that about 2 times during the Super Bowl. It's usually right before the Super Bowl is over and right before it even begins. And I just laugh at those because it's like, yes, you are advertising on the Super Bowl, but some of these commercials, if I own a car dealership, unless I was a pro at doing it, I'm getting somebody else to do the commercial completely. I'm not getting family members, and I'm not doing it myself because none of them are ever good.
Yeah, just to tell people in the chat, yes, this is a gray shirt, but it's a gray concert shirt.
No, it's gray. It's from the Genesis tour, but it's
old
gray.
Genesis t-shirt, so I think it's from 2009, so you can tell it's worn out.
So that's from the Genesis album.
No, this was from the last tour, the reunion.
Oh, the reunion. Yes.
Yeah, this is from 2009.
Yes. That's right.
It was like the picture is the Abacab inside cover, but it was a throwback shirt, which it was nice. It was worth the $40 I paid for it. It was actually worth more than the concert that I saw.
Will you stop it? The concert's good. I listen to it all the time.
The concert was terrible.
You're such a jerk.
No,
Jesus. You are. It's good.
It wasn't good. You got to remember, folks. I saw Genesis in their prime. In their Phil Collins prime from 1978 when I was 11 years old to 1980. Well, actually, I saw the We Can't Dance tour, but I'll say the prime ended in say 83 before the Invisible Touch tour when they were great. And Collins was at his best voice, and there was a really good band. They were tight. The band was good in 2009, but Phil Collins couldn't sing anymore, and that's why I couldn't bear it. But
anyway. Okay, but like as an example, not every great Genesis song was made then on that tour, and I just listened to it last night. Like No Son of Mine is terrific. They did a great job with it.
It was in a different key. It was in a different key, and
not that much. Really, not that much.
Yeah, almost every song that they did had to be.
All You Follow Me was in a different key. Yeah,
yeah, it was really terrible. Anyway, X joining us any minute here. Hello, Hockey World. Today is Thursday, June 25th, 2020.
I'm Russ Cohen, and I'm going to just endure Mike today.
And I'm Michael Lagello, and I'm just going to endure Russ today. And this is the Hockey Buzzcast here on HockeyBuzz.com. We'll start with the Hall of Fame because we talked about it the last couple of days.
Wait, is this the Tampa Bay Lightning Hall of Fame or the Hockey Hall of Fame? Because on the text that I got, it seemed like we were talking about the Tampa Bay Lightning Hall of Fame.
No. Mine was clear. I said Hall of Fame, we'll preview Tampa Bay and a couple other things. It was Act that lumped them together, and like that's why you said Chris Gratton.
And I was like, is Chris Gratton getting in?
And I'm like, Chris Gratton isn't even in the Tampa Bay Hall of Fame. No way. No. Yeah, just because he shut down Eric Lindros for 6 games.
Being paid, he is. Yes.
Yeah, I've never seen somebody get more legs out of shutting down a great player in one 6-game series, and a series that they lost, than Chris Gratton. He ended up going to 3 different teams after that because he was supposedly a shutdown matchup against Eric Lindros.
Just to bring up Chris Gratton for a minute to show people why I thought it was a funny post. How much do you think his career earnings were?
Chris Gratton?
Yeah.
Oh, I'd say probably in the $35 to $40 million range.
$28 million.
Okay, a little more.
How many goals do you think he had?
How many goals? 190, 200?
Yeah, 214 goals. He was a half a point a game.
Yeah.
We're talking about Chris Gratton, who, you clearly want to get into the Tampa Bay Lightning Hall of Fame. I'm kidding. But I was saying, if you want to talk about somebody one of the most overpaid hockey players ever, he's made $28 million to be a half a point a game player with 214 goals. Like, it's just unbelievable.
It really is.
I just said to Russ that Chris Gratton turned one losing first-round series against Eric Lindros into a career because everybody said, oh, my God, this guy's big. He's fast enough.
No, you're right. And the Flyers bought that hook, line, and sinker. And the Flyers, they also played a couple really good guys. I was thinking, Mike, it's really funny you say that. I was trying to think of like you probably like Chris Gratton Sports and Fame can probably be drawn to like 10 games, something like that. Like you're probably right. Like it's like, and a couple games he played against the Flyers where he was amazing against Lindros. Like he was like matching up against Lindros. Right. He did, and that like impressed the Flyers. Like, oh man, if someone can match up against Lindros, we need to get him on our side. That kind of thing.
Right. So they can't shut him down. Which. Right. All right, we'll start with the Hall of Fame announcements.
All right, you guys already entered the official.
We already did the pre-show. Yeah.
Thank you, guys. Welcome to HockeyBuzzcast. HockeyBuzz.com. Boom, go.
Okay. We expect.
I want to explain one thing. One second. Sorry, Mike.
Right, you carry the ball. Go ahead.
Let me know. Thanks. I'll let you carry the ball. You do an excellent job doing that. With the news and everything like that. Mike is your MVP. But this is the whole thing I want to say is I'm sorry for being late. Like sometimes your kids throw you a low curveball right now. Anyway, that's what happened. So I apologize. We're good. Let's go, Mike. Start.
Okay, the Hall of Fame class was announced yesterday. Now, not the Elmer Ferguson, not the writer or the broadcaster. That's going to be announced next Monday. But the class was announced, and two we expected: Jerome McGinley and Marian Hossa. Ken Holland was the builder. Kim St. Pierre was the women's nominee or women's inductee. But the other two of the four were raised a bit of hubbub, and I don't see why, and I'll defend them. Kevin Lowe was one, and Doug Wilson was the other. And I mean, if you want to start with the ones that we,
Hossa does obviously. He was key to a couple teams. He was like the last. He was like the Butch Goring.
Yeah, but was he key? Like, here's my problem with Hossa. He was the third, fourth, or fifth guy you talked about on those teams. He was never the guy. He's not even close to being a point-a-game player in the playoffs, by the way. Not even close.
But he is. Hossa is a really good two-way player.
Yes, he is. But I mean,
I think he was. I'm going to say this: that he was key to the first Penguins Stanley Cup. Like he was. I mean, he lost with Pittsburgh in 2008. He lost with Detroit in 2009. It was only when he went to Chicago. But he won with Pittsburgh first, didn't he?
No. He lost, but he was
right.
Yeah,
you're right. Hey, sorry. Yeah,
and then he won in 2010 with the Blackhawks and won 3 cups. What I was tempted to say on Twitter yesterday was he had 3 cups with the Blackhawks, and he went 0-4 against the Leafs in the playoffs.
Right.
Up until he won the cup in 2010, he had the reputation of being a choke artist.
He was a terrific player. I just didn't see first ballot and why the rush for him, because
I'm 100% with you.
Again, he didn't win the hardware, and other than the Stanley Cups, which he did. But to me, he was maybe on Pittsburgh, Mike. Maybe you're right, but he was never the guy. No. Not even close. But
he was number 3 behind Kane and Taves. But I have to say he was an integral part of that team. I mean, I don't think he wasn't a star on their level, but he was that guy. He was on the power play. He was on the ice when the game was close at the end. So I think his value.
He's a terrific player. I mean, I'm never gonna. Kill his play.
I mean, he was a great player. But at the same time, I agree. I'm like, I mean, to put him before McGillney is ridiculous. Like,
the McGillney thing, I just don't get.
I don't understand at all. Like, it's really, I mean,
it's hard to understand that one.
Because isn't Hossa still technically on some team's roster?
I think he's going to come back. I'm telling you right now.
I mean, isn't he on a roster somewhere? I mean, he is.
He's on Arizona. He's on Arizona right now.
How did he get into the Hall of Fame when he's still on the roster?
Lemieux did it, but he had a disease, so.
That's right. That's so weird that he made it. I mean, think about it.
Hossa's been medically ruled out because of the skin issue.
Until he's not, Mike. I'm telling you, that contract is up.
You made me right.
Come back. Yeah.
Hey, Guy Lafleur came back after he was a Hall of Famer, so it's possible.
Like really superior players. We're talking about Mario Lemieux and Guy Lafleur there. The 2 million people. I mean,
that's my point. McGillney, I don't get. Now, the best story was the Doug Wilson one, because we talked about him at length a year ago, and I made my piece. I sent out a tweet before we talked about it on the show. I replayed that tweet yesterday because I didn't get why he was never in, right? But I sort of gave up hope. And clearly, when they called his house his wife was shocked to the point where I think they were thinking he was never getting in either.
That's one of my favorite things when that happens, like as far as because like again, like you heard, like he was like driving in his car, but he was prepared to like be home, and it was because people like don't know it's coming, but people who don't know it's coming, that's awesome. Like Doug Wilson, that's Leslie. We talked about Doug Wilson this year too, and we talked about the greatest defenseman for the Blackhawks.
But I mean, the thing is that, and somebody thought I was being sarcastic when I tweeted this out yesterday. He had 9 50-plus point seasons. And in 1982, he had 39 goals, which is up there in terms of, say the best offensive years since Bobby Orr.
Right.
There's Coffey, there's him, and there's a few others. I mean, he was, and remember, he as much as Larmer and Savard and that Al Secord line in the early 80s was the centerpiece. It was also Doug Wilson in that monstrous shot from the point. He was a dominating offensive player from the blue line for a number of years, and I don't know why it was such a surprise that he made it. And maybe the fact that he's been a quality general manager for 20 years helped. Was it like a Joe Torre thing, Russ, where Joe Torre was a borderline Hall of Famer as a player? The fact that he won 4 World Series put him over.
Yeah, I mean, maybe. I mean, you look at it. He was 3 times in the top 5 for the Norris, won it once. Like,
he was one of the best defensemen of his era. No question.
Yeah, that's the whole thing for his era. His brother won all the cups. I get that.
Right.
But Murray Wilson.
Yeah, Murray Wilson. Yeah, but I mean, obviously not half the player that Doug.
No, not nearly as good. This was nice though. This was the best story, and I'll give you a quickie Doug Wilson story that was good. If Kevin Allen were on, he would laugh at this if he remembered. But in Pittsburgh, when San Jose was playing, the first day that they had like press availability, before they open up that area where everybody's sitting at their own little podium and you decide who you want to interview.
Right.
They have the coaches and GMs, and Kevin and I are like, I see Kevin like downstairs, and we're both like, oh no, we're late, and we're running to the point where we all of a sudden caught up to like Doug Wilson. He goes, "Oh guys, we're not going to hold this without you."
Yeah, no, he does. That's very Doug.
He's a good guy like that.
I will laugh if Kevin's not here, because I think that you're right. No, you're right, because Doug was really a good guy like that. Like a very unassuming character.
Yes,
and very much aware of the media. Which is interesting because the fact that he really has had it incredibly easy in San Jose. Yeah. But he's done a good job too. Like, and it wasn't until the San Jose owners got like the itch, like once the Sharks went to the Stanley Cup, it wasn't until that itch that Doug Wilson started to make moves that you could tell were not his doing, where he was signing longer, because he was very good at cap management. Like,
he was great at it.
He was probably the best in the league, and that's why the Sharks were always contenders.
Yeah,
every year, and they fell apart, but nothing to do with the group, nothing to do with what Doug Wilson did. I mean, Wilson put that team together to succeed, and that team should have had success many more times than they did.
Yeah.
But then after that happens, suddenly the Vlasic deal and all these things happen, that are way, they're paying, because Wilson never paid for what people did. That's like where you see other people have done that, and that's usually what happens in the NHL. People get paid for what they did. But there is a little bit of cronyism going on. I talked to some players yesterday here, and what they did.
You're not going to say with Ken Holland, are you?
No. No. But
because I think he's a no-brainer.
Well, he is a no-brainer, and he did. I mean, I'm really happy for Ken Holland. Obviously, I mean, Holland deserves it, but I think that also, there's other people that I don't know. I would have said Bob Murray first, but anyway, and I would have put Brian.
You mean Brian Murray?
Brian Murray and Brian Burke. I think both those. But
I don't think Burke was helped by the fact he's on the committee.
Right.
He's on the committee, so how can he be not? That would be the ultimate in sort of.
Well, the interesting thing is, and again, there's no transparency other than I think you have to have 14 votes of the 18-person committee, right?
Right.
Since Burke is on there, he's already lost a vote because he probably can't vote for himself.
And he would probably walk out of the room if somebody nominated him. And then if they turn him down, then he's going to say, "I hate all these effers because they just voted against me." So I'm sure his name, until he's not on the committee, his name won't.
But think about it, Eck. If you had 18 Hockey Buzz bloggers in a room and you were voting on things, it would be hard to get a consensus.
No, you're no question about it. It would be impossible. I mean,
they all should follow me, but
maybe we're voting about you. Maybe you're not even there.
Well, consensuses are like, I mean, here's the thing. To me, okay, so the other, I mean, so what do Doug Wilson and Kevin Lowe have in common? Like that, and that
both were general managers after their careers.
Right.
And both have been like very active still. Like Kevin Lowe is still active.
Kevin Lowe is a very, very active guy.
Well, okay, since we're talking,
I'm not going to say anything against Lowe because Lowe definitely got.
Let me defend him here because I think that defensive defensemen are tougher to quantify than offensive defensemen. And if you're going to let Phil Housley in the Hall of Fame in terms of, he never won a Stanley Cup. He was a brilliant offensive player. It took him years to be I would say early in his career, he was defensively inept. Later in his career, he learned how to play positionally sound, and he was a pretty decent two-way guy later in his career. Lowe was a shutdown defenseman in the Rod Langway mold from the very beginning. Right. And on a team like Edmonton, who had a bunch of, players who played with their hair on fire, like Curry and Gretzky and Coffey, to have a guy who was a shutdown guy, I think was invaluable. And I'm sorry, you look at the resume and the guy's got 6 Stanley Cups and 7 All-Star appearances. I'm sorry. I don't know how he wasn't in before this.
Well, here's my argument, and I really do like Kevin Lowe, and I don't want people to think anything otherwise because he's part of the '94 Rangers too. Mm-hmm. The interesting thing is, I think Ken Morrow's better, and again, Mike, when we were off air, Mike, give everybody an idea of what his first 4 or 5 years were like.
Ken Morrow, in the first 4 years of his hockey career, or his professional career, won the most impactful Olympic gold medal in the history of sport, which was the 1980, at least in the U.S., the 1980 Miracle on Ice, and then won 4 Stanley Cup championships with the Islanders.
And here's the other thing, and in those years, he also had some key goals, even though he was not an offensive guy. Lowe has a lot more points, and he has more goals than Kevin Lowe in the playoffs. And they both played the same role, but every once in a while, Ken Morrow would get you a stinger, and they did it against the Rangers. He did it against a few clubs. I think he's better. I really do. And the fact that he is not in and Kevin Lowe is, that's my problem. It's not that Kevin Lowe's in. It's just that how can you keep this guy out if Kevin Lowe's in?
Now, Ken Morrow, he played 4 years at Bowling Green. Mm-hmm. So he entered the NHL at 23, and his career was only 10 years, and he only had 105 career points. But he's not that type of defenseman. The scoring on that team was done by Dennis Potvin on the blue line. So I think eventually he could get in because 4 cups in 4 years, that's pretty damn good.
Here's the interesting thing too. So he was a plus 142, right?
Yeah.
And the Islanders were good most of those years. Low on the great Edmonton Oilers, 156. So considering there wasn't a Gretzky after a while, like a Bossy and Trottier wasn't there the whole time Morrow was there because Bossy got injured at some point. You know what? Those numbers are really comparable in every area that you'd want them. Neither guy won a Norris. So,
Yeah.
I fight for Ken Morrow.
There are 8. I'm trying to answer the question. I was trying to come up with the answer to the question that Bob asked us here. I was trying to see how many there were. I found 8 Oilers that are in the Hall of Fame.
Oh yeah, it's an unbelievable amount.
Gretzky, Curry, Messier, Anderson, Coffey, Fuhrer, 6.
Right.
Let's see here. Let's go to the.
Keep. I mean, the question I think he asked is, which is interesting.
Now Low. That's
is this the most. I think this, and I think the only other Oiler I could find that's in the Hall of Fame would be Pronger, who was like just an Oiler temporarily.
Yeah, but that's
right.
So I would say
I don't
think there is a team with more like a single.
No, but just to give you an example where Morrow should be in, right? Here are the Islanders in from their heyday team: Potvin, Trottier, Bossy, Smith, and Gillies.
Yeah, right.
And maybe, and I do agree with what Larry Brooks put out there yesterday.
Maybe Goring should be in.
Goring should be in there. Yes.
Yeah.
But think about that: 8 players from a team,
8 players from like a 21-man roster that's skated on the ice.
Let's just say that
that's more than 30. That's like 40% roughly.
In the post-expansion era, that's probably the most, because I think like those Detroit Red Wings teams with
or some of those
Sawchuk and Rhett Kelly and Howe and Lindsay. Yeah, I mean everybody on those teams that was good was in the Hall of Fame.
Is there anybody else from the Oilers team now that we could think of that should be in the Hall of Fame?
From that team?
From that team? I mean, they're probably gonna have Tikkanen. I don't think Tikkanen.
No, not Tikkanen.
Now, let me ask this dumb question, but it's not really that dumb. Of the 18 panel at the Hall of Fame, I wonder how many are Oilers.
A good question. I mean, I don't know. To finish my thought on the other thing, though, and I can try to find that out. But to finish my thought on the other thing, that some of these guys are getting in. We all say, Kevin Lowe deserves to be in. Yeah, he does. I mean, I don't think anyone who gets elected to the Hall of Fame necessarily you sit there and say they're not a Hall of Famer. I mean,
well, there's 2 or 3, I would say.
Yeah, I mean, but the question is because the bar is just so frigging high, and
it is.
But you're debating superstars versus superstars here. It's like these are all. I mean, Kevin Lowe. I've been watching a lot of. I've probably seen more of the old Oilers in the last month that I remember seeing when they were actually live. Like they're on all the time on TSN and stuff and Sportsnet and stuff like that.
And looking at their roster in like the late 80s, I think that Lowe is the last one because Tikkanen, I don't think Tikkanen will get in. I don't think Craig Simpson or Steve Smith or Charlie Huddy or McSorley. I don't think any of them will get in. I don't think Andy Moog or Bill Ranford will get in.
Face-offs, McTavish will get in.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, I don't know.
No, I mean that's not. I mean, so the other night it was just this last night. Gosh, man, the days blur together, don't they? I think it was last night. I'm watching the 1984 Stanley Cup Finals between the Oilers and the Islanders.
Right.
And I mean, talk about an awesome Stanley Cup final. I mean, the Islanders have already won 4 Stanley Cups at that point.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. 80,
that
81,
was
that was
81, 82, and 83.
I was thinking 3. Okay, yep.
Because they won 4 in a row, and then the Oilers went on to win 4 out of 5, right? So, so you're talking about like 2 dynasties clashing right against each other. Like that, you can't get any better than this. This is like what the Stanley Cup final we never saw. That I would have loved to have seen. We couldn't see it because it would have been like the Blackhawks versus the Kings right in the middle there. Like that kind of thing. Like it's just like this. So watching this, and I'm sitting there with the kids, and it's blurry as hell because it's the old. The kids are like, "Oh, you can't. What's wrong with the television?" that kind of thing. I'm like, "Yeah, well, this is how it used to be, guys." But and it's boxed off in a square.
Yeah.
And I'm like, but look at Wayne Gretzky. Watch Wayne Gretzky. I'm like, just like I want you guys to see like what he was and how he played and how he made the people around him better. And it was just like, even my kids, like they totally got it. I mean, he made moves that you see like a lot of players making now. And like, he looks like a player from transported back to then. And I said, yeah, that's because the players now learned how to do that because of him. That he started a lot of those moves are, like the famous like deke to your forehand move, which if you remember that was not something you saw often on breakaways. People will the deke tended to be your backhand, right? And it was like, but he actually like carrying it to your forehand as far as you can, getting the goalie out and putting it in. That's like we think about Forsberg doing that. Gretzky did that too. It's like, I mean, so watching that, it's so much fun to watch that game and watching that when I was looking at the Islanders too and who were the best Islanders on the ice. So Billy Smith's not in the Hall of Fame.
Yes, he is.
Oh, he is.
Okay, he was right. The guy who I know will never be in the Hall of Fame, but really was like good enough to be in the Hall of Fame. It was John Snelly. Like there's no getting around. Like when I'm watching,
he wasn't good long enough.
He was really good all around. Yeah.
In '84, in that series, when I'm watching, I watched 2 of the games. So they played like 3 of the games in a row. I watched parts of 2 of them. Snelly was like one of the best Islanders on the ice. Maybe he was, maybe some of the other guys were getting older a little bit or whatever, but he was definitely phenomenal. I mean, that's just like, but yeah, that Oilers team. And then I also watched Kevin Lowe because
actually, I think you're leaving out an Islander who I think was way better than Tonelli was Bob Bourne. If you look at the
Bourne was good.
Point totals and the speed he had, he, like, as a Ranger fan, he annoyed the hell out of me because he had a lot of big goals, and he was like a point a game in 79-80. He was a point a game in 82-83. He had 28 points in 20 games. Like, he had some big Stanley Cup runs.
He really did. I remember him in Stratomatic, Mike. He's like a Stratomatic guy who was like better in Stratomatic because he was good.
Who, Bourne?
Bob Bourne, yeah. Like
He wasn't a 4 on defense.
He was like consistently a 3.
And he scored shorthanded goals. So him and Anders Kaller were great penalty killers. Now I'll give
Tonelli too, who I hated. Yeah,
Tonelli had a 100-point season in '85, but and had 836 career points, which is very good. And he was a member of all 4 of those Cup teams. So maybe it's possible he missed out on winning another Cup with Calgary by a year. He ended up going to LA. But, he had a good career, and he actually played 3 years in the WHA before he played with the Islanders. So
he was a really good player.
Yeah.
I mean, just watching him play, and if you watch that series, the Oilers are so fast. Like, obviously the Oilers are fast, and there are some players in the Islanders that just can't do it. Like, they can't play at that speed, but Tonelli could. Like, Tonelli was right there with him. Like, he looked like if Tonelli had been on the Oilers, he'd be a Hall of Famer. That's what it looked like. Like, when you think about it, if he'd been on that team playing with those guys, because he was out skating his line mates quite often. That's another thing you notice when you watch old games is, like, now we talk about, like, players can't keep up with their line mates. For the most part, players in the NHL can keep up with their line mates now. But there were some guys right in that era that were getting so much faster than everybody else that really was an issue. And you could see it with Tonelli. That was definitely the case. And I remember hating Tonelli too. But I don't remember him being as good as he was. Just like
I do because I lived on the island. So
and you got to remember those Islanders teams. Even though after their 4 Cup years, you saw LaFontaine and Flatley start to come around as young players.
LaFontaine was in this series, so LaFontaine's part of this.
Right, but the problem is that Trottier started to slip at that point. He was, his prime was like from say 77 to like 83, and then he started to drop off. And when he didn't have anybody to match up against Gretzky, and at his peak he could. I mean, he was a gritty enough player. And Trottier was very Bobby Clark like. He was very skilled offensively, but he also had that meanness to him that could get it underneath the other team's skin. So
trying to think of a Trottier type player that we have in the NHL now, like for people who are younger, because it's like
I don't think there's anybody like him in terms of the fact.
I think if Ryan Getzlaf had more points per game, he'd be that guy.
This thing has been hanging up here for 2 weeks. Why would it just during the show decide to do this?
Bad karma.
Comic relief.
I think Ryan Getzlaf, even though he's bigger in stature, I think Ryan Getzlaf's game is similar. I think there's some similarities.
I think offensively, the guy who matched up with Trottier actually was the guy who was drafted first overall by the Islanders. Now is Tavares, but Tavares is not the type of defensive player and sort of I mean, I thought Trottier was borderline dirty. I loved him as a player. He was very, very good.
I mean, you talk about careers falling off. Like for Bossy in 86, 87, for him to retire because of a bad back and only have 38 goals, today's game, you'd say 38 goals, but he was getting in the 60s.
Yeah. No, he was very Clark. We don't have like those kind of forward.
Mike Bossy scored 50 goals every year except his last year.
Yeah. I'm telling you, my nightmare would be to wake up and I would read Newsday and be like, Bossy 2 goals. All right. I try and get to something else because the Rangers are buried in the paper, right?
Yeah.
Bossy 3 goals. Bossy 4 goals. It's like, come on, man. It's just like it was unbelievable.
And you know what, Russ? Around Buffalo, the criticism was of the fact that the Sabres had the pick before the Islanders.
Yeah.
And they took Rick Sealing ahead of Mike
Bossy. He's not a bad player. He's a good player.
Oh, no, and
not a Mike Bossy, obviously. I mean,
to illustrate that, the Leafs had 2 first-round picks ahead of them. They took John Anderson and Trevor Johansson. And the Rangers took Ron Duguay.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
he was a really good player, but
and Lucien Deblois.
We got to talk a rumor, guys, because it's
okay.
All right, we got to get in. That was a great discussion, though. I'm going to keep thinking about that. There's somebody I wanted to talk about that game, but we'll get into that later. All right, so I'm thrilled because I've been, my job is as Hockey Rumors, and honestly, no one's been talking to anybody forever. And I sit back and I talk to people, and it's like, it's why, we have like all the things we've been talking about, like different things. But finally, this week, 2 things come: Hoffman to Montreal, and now this, which goes back. And I purposely have not talked to Mike about this trade yet, this rumor, because I didn't want to. I wanted to save it for here.
Because he didn't want to get shot down, but okay.
No, I just wanted to save it for here.
Okay.
No, I didn't want to. And
I've purposely not looked at it.
Remember very clearly now that I report rumors, not what I think are going to happen. So I might not agree with this trade as well, but this is just what it is. All right. So what I was told was that back at the trade deadline, the Leafs had some discussions with the Sabres around Rasmus Ristolainen, and I was a little bit, and that's not surprising. I mean, it does. He's a right defenseman, big guy. He does fit. Yep. I mean, there's no question if the Leafs had drafted him, they would be happy with him, and he would be on their team. So they had, but during those discussions at the trade deadline, there were 2 teams that talked to Buffalo. One was trying to get a deal done at the trade deadline, and the Leafs were more or less saying, we can't do it now because we got to clear cap space out, and that's going to take out players from our team that we think are key components right now. But we're going to have a lot of money in the summer. Who knows what's going to happen with Tyson Barrie, things like that. So the Leafs and Sabres were doing like speculative stuff towards the summer, and now those discussions have started again. And because the Sabres right now are already they're in off-season mode, right? They're done. And and then here's another thing as a side note: we might see some trades during the summer before.
With the bottom 7 teams.
But yeah, by the bottom 7 teams, or if say like the Leafs were to get knocked out,
right?
They could
half the league will be out of the playoffs. So yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, after the first round, more than half the league is done, right? So it's always the case. So as you see it now, this is so the deal is there's a couple draft picks, and I was confused, and sorry I got the wrong dates wrong because I went back and checked his text out. Basically, it's 2 third-round picks go to the Leafs. No, wait. I'm sorry, guys. Get this right. Okay, let me just get through the players.
Yeah, I was gonna say say mid-round picks or
they're third and fourth. One might be a second, but
yeah,
that's where we are. Okay, so the players involved are Rasmus Ristolainen heading to Toronto for Alex Kerfoot and Andreas Janssen. Right, these are the 2 guys we're looking at. Okay. And that is and then there are some draft picks involved. The Leafs get the better of the draft picks in the deal. I can see that. But not by a lot, but a little bit. Like the Leafs might get 2 picks where the Sabres get 1 kind of thing. 3rd, 4th round picks right around there. And they're over a couple of years. They're not like immediate. One of them might be this draft, but most of them are in future drafts. All right. So this deal though, it makes some sense on both sides.
I think it does. Sure.
What do you think, Mike?
Okay. Here's the sense. The Leafs are losing Barrie. They're not going to re-sign him. That's one right-hand defenseman. They're not re-signing Cody Ceci. That's another right-hand defenseman. And right now, the top 2 right-handed defensemen for next year are Timothy Liljegren, who has about 12 games of NHL experience, and Justin Hall, who they just signed to an extension. Right. Okay, so that makes sense. Right. Ristolainen would fit in because they've needed somebody who on the right side who plays physical, and he would do that. It also makes sense on the Toronto perspective because they actually have too many forwards when it comes to the expansion draft. And with Janssen and Kerfoot, if they trade, and the money would almost be a balance because Kerfoot makes 3.5, Janssen makes 3.4. They're both under contract, I think, for another 3 years. That would give Buffalo cost certainty and players locked in, which is important for them because they can't get anybody to sign in Buffalo unless they're overpaid. So that gives them 3 years of security. And with the Leafs, that would make it more reasonable. They would have 7 forwards to protect in the expansion draft: Matthews, Tavares, Nylander, Marner, Kapanen, Hyman, and one other. So that would there's where it would make sense. Right. Where it doesn't, and I think this is important, is the Buffalo Sabres will never, ever, ever trade anyone of value to the Toronto Maple Leafs for one simple reason. If they do, and that player is good, if you think Terry and Kim Pegula are getting buried now for their incompetence, it will be 10 times worse.
But clearly Botterill was trading for his job. So at that point, he doesn't care.
Right.
But I'm going to give you credit, though, Mike. You haven't gone over the edge about Kerfoot, because this does make sense for Buffalo, because it does give them that other center they need. Yeah. And like you said,
perfect fit for. I was told that Kruger is 100% in on Kerfoot. That's what I was told. The main thing in him is he wants Kerfoot in this deal.
And see the Leafs do have some center depth. I believe that they believe Pierre Engvall can play center. They really like Adam Brooks, who played most of the year with the Marlies. So they believe, Jason Spezza will be there for another year. They love the fact he has on the team. So there's center depth there that if they do trade a Kerfoot, they can survive it. Where I think the problem is from the Toronto perspective is that right now, going into the expansion, not everything is the expansion draft, but they have to think going ahead about this. They have Morgan Riley under contract for 2 more years. They just re-signed Jake Muzzin. And then Ristolainen would be the third guy that you would protect. That means that both Travis Dermott, who they like a lot, and Justin Hall are exposed in the expansion draft. That would mean that they would have to give up something to Seattle,
right?
Get them to not take those guys or take one they. Yeah, and there's where I don't know.
Even if they take either one of them, Mike, it is not setting the Leafs back to the point where you have to worry.
No, and all their
I wouldn't give them anything. I would just let them pick.
And this is the kind of thing the Leafs have to do. I mean, they need to move forwards out to get a defender. This is what they had to. And I just got a text, Mike, from somebody that is in the league that we know well, but I'll tell you who it is later. He said, "Tell Mike this." He's right that the Sabres won't trade a player that they like to the Leafs. But remember that word.
Not that they like. Not that they like, that is valuable. And
but what my guy is saying is that they think that the Sabres don't think Ristolainen is all that he's cracked up to be.
Okay, and that may very well be the case. But what I'm saying is the potential blowback, and Russ, back me on this. The potential blowback, if Ristolainen has been sort of like a this that type of defenseman, a lot of potential, but nothing. If he puts it all together, he gets traded to Toronto and he has a 55-point season with 100 penalty minutes and plays 25 minutes a night and is kick-ass and is a Norris Trophy candidate. You may as well move the Sabres to Quebec City. That's how much of an embarrassment.
No question. And that's why this trade may have saved Botterill's job, but he didn't get it done.
Right.
Well, I don't think it was possible at that point because
it was the Leafs basically said, "Yeah, we're not giving you Kerfoot because the playoffs. Like the playoffs are coming up, and we're going to do this." And right now they are, and they have Barry, and they've got what pieces they need. I mean, the idea here is this guy replaces Barry for them. This is and it's an upgrade on Barry, and they see that as not just an upgrade, but like a much better defensive player than Barry is.
Now they can't make this trade because Barry's going to be a free agent.
Yeah, you're talking about a potential shutdown pairing of Muzzin and Ristolainen if this deal is made. That's pretty damn good.
That's good, and this trade puts the Leafs in an actual serious spot.
Would have put this deal's
I don't think it's a would have thing. I think that this deal will, but if this deal happens,
they're not going to trade and get Tyson Barry knowing that they have to.
No. Barry's not in the deal.
But
Barry's gone. Like I'm saying, Barry.
This is the thing that I'm skeptical of. Let's just say that what you've been told, what the rumor is valid, and this has a potential of happening. This is the last type of deal that Kevin Adams, in his first move as a Sabres general manager, makes, because this exposes him to the potential of being ripped to shreds if it turns out badly.
Not initially, Mike, and that's the thing. Initially, Sabres fans would be very excited about it, and there'd be a lot of talk about it, and so initially that wouldn't happen. So I think there's a chance he would make this deal, but
I'm not saying he wouldn't make it. I'm saying it has the potential for him to be ridiculed and ripped to shreds if it doesn't turn out well. The type of deal that Adams needs to make as his first move is something that's low risk, something that's high reward but low risk, like trading a draft pick to Tampa Bay for Tyler Johnson. Because
my guy again, who signs himself, should have been can't nominate myself. He signs himself as that. He says, we'll get this guy on as a guest. He says, ask Mike if people in Buffalo like people who don't want to be there.
Well, I mean, that's been the case with Ristolainen for years. Yeah,
So when you're trading him away, does he get a lot of heat trading away a guy that doesn't want to be there anyway?
Just like Jamal Adams with the Jets, Russ. The problem is great. The player doesn't want to be there, but you have to get value for him.
Right?
Here we go. Ask Mike about the fact that the Leafs might be trading away some serious players here too.
The only problem with this act.
Basically saying like this, like you are making the Leafs better potentially.
Yeah,
you're also making the Leafs worse and making yourself better. So the risk goes both ways.
The only problem with this is with the Sabres' defensive pairings. You're now moving either McCabe or Jokiharju up to a second pairing, and that's not good.
Yeah, and they have the defensive depth within the organization with Borgen, with a few other young guys.
Spots, but after the number 3 spot. Even really after number 2, it's going to be Montour and either McCabe and Jokiharju. That is not defensively, I'm saying. Yes. Defensively, it is not a great pairing.
They do love Jokiharju. They do love
but he's not great defensively.
No, he's not.
He's arm of a shot, and he skates really well. But the problem is, so you probably put him with McCabe, but then you're putting Montour on the third pairing because he's been deficient since he's been there.
And I'll say this about and Kyle Dubas has to think a couple years down the road with every move he makes.
Right.
You trade for Ristolainen, and you have Ristolainen and Morgan Riley becoming UFAs in the same year, and Rasmus Sandin's contract coming up coming off his entry level. If I'll tell you right now, if they're spending money on somebody 2 years from now, it's going to be Riley and not Ristolainen. So basically what you're trading is a couple forwards for a 2-year rental in Ristolainen.
Depending, Mike. Let's say, everything you've been saying comes true and the Leafs get demolished in this first round of the playoffs.
Then they have to make nuclear.
They might go nuclear in the offseason because they realize, okay, we're going down a bad path here.
And I continue to say, and until I'm proved wrong, I will continue to say it, that if they do go nuclear, as you describe it, it's not going to be a move like Kerfoot and Janssen. First of all, Janssen
would be bigger than that.
Yeah, Janssen's coming off an ACL injury, so he'll probably be fine. But he's coming off an ACL injury, so his value is down, even though he had a really good rookie year. Yep. And Kerfoot had underachieved in his first year in Toronto. Their values are down slightly. Yeah. If you're going to trade somebody and you're going to get an impact defenseman, the guy you trade is William Nylander because he had his best year as a
and that's why I think the nuclear part is what I'm talking about. I think then that comes into play because then again, if somehow the Sabres want to get in on William Nylander because they think they can make him a center, then maybe that's where this trade goes.
And I would highly doubt that the Buffalo Sabres, after their experience with his younger brother, are going to trade for William Nylander.
I know, but they're so desperate for a center. If somebody in that organization believes he could go back and play the center position, then I think this trade is possible with different partners. Ristolainen would be in it, Nylander would be in it, and you would just be adding other things.
I could see that. I could see it. Well, it's an interesting one. I think, and it is the kind of trade to me. You don't have to go. The Leafs should not be going nuclear. Like they are.
If they get bounced early in this, they should because their defense isn't good enough, and they've spent way too much money on their top forwards to be able to survive the next 2 or 3 years with a defense that's this lousy.
And they're not moving Tavares, they're not moving Matthews, and they're not moving Marner. So the next logical player in terms of do they need that difference-making defenseman? Yes. Is Ristolainen a difference-making defenseman? I think he is, but not in the level. Like if you're trading Nylander, you're not trading him for Ristolainen. You're trading him for somebody.
Well, I mean, again, you don't know what the cap's going to be like. They may be willing to do it to get out of the cap.
And the monies are comparable, but
right.
The monies are comparable in Kerfoot and Janssen.
Remember, there's still upside with Ristolainen. I mean,
sure.
The numbers you see in Buffalo could be much better somewhere else. I mean, we should all look at that and realize that that's probably the case. If nothing else, even if they change his role and make him more of a physical guy who's going to get some points, that still helps the Leafs because, again, if the Leafs had 3 Jake Muzzins, they'd be fine. But Jake Muzzin wasn't enough of a difference maker to solidify their entire defensive problem. That's the problem.
And unlike a couple years ago, Russ, the Leafs do have young guys on their bottom pairing that I think have upside potential to be top 4. I think Sam
could be a middle pairing guy for sure.
Yeah. Right. Let's move on to Tampa. I'd like to do that today.
Okay.
We're giving I know it's 1:59. We'll give him 10 minutes here and let's do this up. Okay. So, because Tampa's a really interesting team. I mean, this is a team that obviously, looking back, they have been waiting desperately to get back to the playoffs. Like there is hardly any motivation to play this regular season for the Tampa Bay Lightning. Like you can tell the way they feel. Like, I mean, if you're a team that has like an epic season like they had last year, and you get bounced in the first round, you don't care about the regular season next year. You want to get ready for the playoffs. And for a while, the Tampa Bay Lightning played like they really didn't care about the regular season.
The first two months they were a 500 team basically.
And they were really, it was shocking how bad they were. But then they did find their way, and immediately after that, they really started to pick up their game. To the point where they have to be considered like one of the top 3 Stanley Cup contenders. Like to me, it's St. Louis, Boston, and Tampa. Those are the 3 teams that I look at as the 3 Cup contenders.
Well, Russ, the thing I look at with Tampa is you saw that Julien Brisebois, I think, said we're going for this because they were one of the hottest teams in the league when the league was paused, and 2 weeks before at the deadline, not only did they trade a first round pick and a good prospect in Cal Foote to get Blake Coleman, who's got another year in his contract, so it wasn't a rental.
Yeah,
they trade another first-round pick to get Barclay Goodrow from San Jose, and they take on Bogosian. They sign him from Buffalo after he had his contract terminated. So they made moves that were like not desperate moves, but moves that were like we need to win now. This year and next year. They have their window isn't closing completely because they have a lot of depth in the organization, but they're going to have to pare down. And especially now when it comes to the cap being flat the next few years, you're going to probably see guys like Tyler Johnson and Killorn or Yanni Gourde playing someplace else.
Yeah. I mean, look, when Stamkos goes back in, I guess like Mitchell Stevens goes out, that makes their lineup again so good. I mean,
it's crazy. I mean, we've always said 3 years to rest. They scratch players that other teams would.
I know. The addition of Blake Coleman is great. You could play him second, third, or fourth line. They might even move him to the fourth line. And then when they put Hedman back in, Luke Schen's out of there because they were winning games with Luke Schenn in there.
Yes.
Right. I mean, they have either. I mean, the reality is. Luke Schenn might not be the greatest player in the NHL, but he's good enough that you put him around a great team, he's going to be fine.
Yeah, he's a plug, and so Zach Bogosian, but you could rotate between who you're deciding is going to play, him or Bogosian. It almost doesn't matter. Everybody else that they have is so good. Now, they're not rock solid defensively, they're defensemen, but they all can move the puck very, very well, and that's what is good for them.
And I remember you saying this when we were talking about the Lightning maybe a few months ago. That and I think at that point it was looking like they were going to play Toronto in the first round because that was the setup at that point. And we all observed the fact that Tampa still has a situation psychologically that they're still not recovered from that loss to Columbus, and they need to sort of have a victory in the first round to sort of get past that to maybe be the team that they were. They're set up for that, but does that mean it's going to happen? No. And then
someone like Coleman sort of helps them because he's a different voice, and Bogosian maybe helps them because he's a different voice.
And they added Patrick Maroon, who won a cup last year.
Yeah, Maroon won a cup last year, so that's really recent where you could say, all right, that's good. And then the other thing is, again, Cirelli is a weapon on the penalty kill. Like that's a guy that He's a top penalty killer, and he's a top shorthanded goal scorer. So that's something where you look at it and you say, all right, Tampa is going to be a tough team to face. The interesting thing is, though, Tampa in their penalty kill looks like they're about 15th, which is crazy. It should be better than that.
Yeah, because of the goaltending they have,
I know.
Here's the clue that you're going to see dramatic changes with their roster after this season, because they traded JT Miller to clear $5 million in cap space. They did the draft last year. RFAs: Cirelli, Stevens, Sergachev, Cernak. That's going to cost you a bit of money. You're probably going to have to clear about $10 million in cap space to get all those guys re-signed.
Yeah.
And that's Johnson and somebody else. So, and they're probably going to lose Shattenkirk. He was a one-year UFA signing. I don't know if they'll re-sign Bogosian or Shen. We don't know. But, there's going to be some turnover there. And they do have depth in the organization. They've got some young guys coming, and that they'll probably go that way. But they're going to have to clear out salary to sign the guys who they want to keep long-term.
Right. No question about it. All right, let's look at some of the matchups they have here.
The one thing I want to say is, and this is why their penalty kill should be good. Yeah. The crazy thing is when they're shorthanded, Vasilevsky's save percentage is a .922, but when they're on the power play, it's .847. So he's giving up goals he's giving up shorthanded goals.
And here's the reason I think that's
that's a weakness. Like, I didn't realize he had that weakness.
And I've been doing this for a while, and I've been trying, as far as there's this concept I've been playing around in my head for a while with goalies. And the Vasilevsky, what is his strong point? Like, he is a side-to-side goalie.
Great athletic ability.
Crazy athletic. You're not going to score off the rush, on the rush. But if you're in power plays are a different game, right? Where your players are set up, you're driving shots, you're getting rebounds, you're trying to get deflections. That's really the way to beat Vasilevsky. And the bottom line, this should be a key to teams when they look at playing against Tampa, because this is where you're going to beat him. Like, the power play setup does not play to his strengths. It's more about angles. It's more about positioning. He depends so much on his quickness that his positioning can be lapsed a little bit, and his playing deflections is not the greatest. And I've been told this, before, and I think that this is the case. This is what you see with the power play, because you're right. I mean, that save percentage for the power play doesn't make any sense at all.
Well, and so I'm looking it up now to see how many shorthanded goals. By the way, Marc-Andre Fleury has given up the most this year, shorthanded 34. Carey Price second, Binnington third, Pekka Rinne fourth. That's no surprise. Vasilevsky is tied for fourth with Rinne, Bernier, and himself with 31 shorthanded goals against. That is shocking to me.
That to me is way more of an indictment on Tampa, on the team in general. In front,
he's still giving them up though.
Giving them up, but you think about shorthanded goals tend to be 2-on-1s, breakaways, 3-on-1.
By the way, Freddie Anderson has given up 30 this year.
Yeah, defense. I think teams that play more forwards on the point, and stuff like that. Like, you'll see that, like Tampa does that a lot. That's where you're going to have issues with. The Leafs do that too. You're going to have issues with.
Most teams are using 4 forwards and 1 defenseman.
But it depends how good that forward is.
Rask has only given up 23. So this is a weakness for Vasilevsky.
It's definitely a weakness. Now, a couple of their things. So against the teams the top 4 teams. Interesting little trend here with them. Okay, so they're 2-0 against Philly. They're 3-1 against Boston. They're 0-3 against the Caps, which is an interesting twist, because the interesting thing about these top 4 teams is they all have teams that they're better against.
And they all have a nemesis.
They all have their nemesis. The Caps, though, going through like the entire thing. Tampa's record against the teams that are in the playoffs is not the greatest. I mean, but then I went back and I said, okay, let's find this out from, like, say, February 1st, or January 1st. Like, when they actually, I went from January 1st till now against the teams in the playoffs, they only lost twice. So they were, but before that, they were pretty horrible. They're 1-2 against Toronto, and actually the 2 losses they had were both the Toronto Maple Leafs.
The one thing I could tell you where I think Tampa has the edge when they play the Flyers is their team speed. All four lines are faster than the Flyers. Like it's just the Flyers do have trouble with the foot speed that Tampa can bring, and that's a big problem. Now for them with Washington's a pretty fast club, and I think because Washington has good enough defensemen, I think that's probably like Washington's defense is better than the Flyers. It doesn't matter what the record says or what the goals against or whatever, but man to man, they're still better, and that's probably what helps them.
And I think we were talking about Vasilevsky before. He was a victim in the first 2 months. His record was not good. His record since December 1st was 26-7.
Yeah, he's ridiculous. I mean, now what's fascinating too is
let's throw that out the window now too, because
true. But
3-0 against the Pittsburgh Penguins. All right, so that's their I mean,
that one I can't explain because the Penguins defense is better. I'm not sure what the issue is.
My first thought with the Capitals was this: if you're the Tampa Lightning, you think you're one of the best teams in the league. Like you have in your mind, when you go into every game, you should win every game. There's no question that Tampa thinks that way, and they should. I mean, what they did last year, they should. So when you're the best team in the league, you have to focus. Like your team, from a coaching perspective, has to focus on something that you're playing against. Like you have to focus on your team. So if you look up against like an Ovechkin or something like that, if you focus on Ovechkin, you're gonna, they're gonna say, okay, we got to stop Ovechkin. Well, you really don't. If you're Tampa, you're the team that's got to be stopped. You go out there and you play your game. If you focus on Ovechkin, that can throw you off your game, and I've seen that happen with teams a lot. If the good teams tend to do that, like you say, that falls apart when they're looking at who they're with Pittsburgh. But the Pittsburgh games, which is fascinating about them, were
early close games. Is that why?
I'm going to look up exactly what those were. I'm going to find that again. I thought they were earlier in the season when I remember it. They beat Columbus the one time they played them. Talk about the fear that they had, but they won in overtime. I mean, it was a 2-1 game, and it was an important game, obviously, for their psyche, having been in that spot before, right? But it was a 2-1 game. So that's interesting. They're 4-0 against Montreal, 3-1 against Florida. So they've had no trouble with those teams. 1-2 against the Islanders. 1-2 against the Rangers. 1-2 against Carolina. So but these games again were early in the season, most of them, because when you get to the end of the season, so they have their issues for sure, and they're not they weren't perfect against these, but the thing is, like I said, the regular season, if you're Tampa this year, that there was no motivation for it, and I really do agree with Mike that I like the moves they made at the trade deadline. Like they didn't screw around. They fixed a couple of small things, and they already were so ridiculously solid, right? I think you're right.
So, like we did with Boston yesterday, predict where you think they're gonna end up. Yeah,
this to me is I have a tough time seeing them not, going to either being a conference final or a cup champion, which is the same thing I said about Boston. So I guess I'm saying I'm going to see Boston and Tampa. But those two teams do seem to me so much ahead of everybody else.
Well,
I'm going to stick with my original preseason prediction, and I think Washington is going to take out Tampa.
Well, I will offer this. The fact
if they play them.
The fact that their training camp facilities have been shut down and now opened up again. There's been a number of distractions. We don't know. We don't know which players have been tested positive. I think they said it was 3. I have a feeling they'll get past the first round, but I think they'll probably lose in the round of 8. So I think they'll lose in the second round.
It's interesting. I mean, to me, it so much depends on what you're going to get out of their stars, right?
Sure.
If their stars show up, I mean, there's so many things about this.
I definitely don't like them against Washington. I don't.
That is a big issue, and they probably wanted to. They wanted to play Washington in the first round,
right?
So there's that. I mean, now a couple of quick things about them: goal scoring, number 1 in the league, 243 goals, and number 2 in the league, Toronto, 237. So
yeah, but they got to do it in the playoffs, and they didn't do it last.
Yeah, no question. Goals against though, they were. They're right in the middle, like 194. So they were,
but the first 2 months were bad.
Yeah, the first 2 months killed them with that. I give my
second on that. Special teams, like you said, Russ, earlier, their power play was 5th overall. Yeah. And they're shorthanded. They were, let's see.
They're like 15 or something.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, they should be better than that.
Go ahead, Mike.
We have a couple breaking things before we end the show.
Okay.
One is on the funnier side, especially for our ongoing situation with Seattle and the fact that they haven't revealed their name. Elliot Friedman reports that Amazon's Jeff Bezos has bought the naming rights for the arena, the Seattle arena, and he's going to call it Climate Pledge Arena. But they don't have a team name yet, so the arena has got a name before he does. But
all right. As an animal lover, Russ, there's such an obvious thing here. Okay, the arena's got to be called the Rainforest.
They just called it Climate Pledge Arena.
He's calling it Climate Pledge because he's pledged like $2 billion for climate change in the United States. That's
Climate Pledge Arena.
Climate Pledge Arena.
I like it. No, I like it.
I like it. I mean, obviously, I'm anything for climate.
Considering he didn't do it Amazon and he did that, I give him a lot of credit for that.
Now, Jeff, come on, give some money to advertise on the HockeyBuzzcast. And
yeah.
Okay. The other thing, Pierre LeBrun is reporting.
That was a good pitch, Jack. We'll get him every time.
We're supporting him every day here. That's all I have to say, Jeff. I get Amazon deliveries every day coming in here.
Pierre LeBrun is reporting that with Vancouver as a hub city, their bid hitting a snag. Apparently, it has to do with the health authorities in British Columbia. Sources confirm that the NHL has commenced more detailed conversations with Edmonton and Toronto for the Canadian hub city. According to him, LA and Chicago are backups to the Canadian hub cities, that it's Vegas and a Canadian city, and that Chicago and LA are only backups if the Canadian hub city does not turn out.
Vegas just changed some laws because of what the pandemic that's happening here that I heard this morning could throw a monkey wrench into this for the NHL. Something I think that they changed their mask wearing thing to like a mandatory. There's just a couple of things because I think
Texas just did that. I know that.
Vegas did too, or Nevada did too. I think that I don't know that how that's going to change things, but it could. And I think that the NHL, like the way things are going with the pandemic, I would be freaking terrified to go to Vegas right now. I don't know. I don't get it how they're not,
Well, if they're in a bubble, I think you don't have to worry about the general population, especially if they're in a sold out hotel, like they're not selling to the public, then I think that alleviates a lot of fears.
Right.
Yeah. All right. I'll say it. But I do think Edmonton is a great place to do it. I think that makes tons of sense.
Boring.
Yeah, but that's the problem. John Tavares in a recent conference call said that amenities are an issue, that they want some place where they can do stuff on days in between. They don't want to be sitting in their hotels in the game.
John Tavares, if you've never noticed, is definitely the most exciting player.
Yeah, I know. And if he but Russ, he's reflecting what the rank and file are asking for. So I don't think he's looking for many amenities.
No.
Oh my God. Yeah, and California is having issues right now with COVID too. That's another thing.
Yeah.
LA. I think Chicago. I think Toronto. I do think Toronto's got a good shot at it. I really do.
Toronto has a great shot at it.
I didn't think at it in the beginning, but I didn't think that was
going to keep Mike out, but they have a good shot.
Obviously the NHL is super comfortable there, right? They held the World Cup of Hockey there.
They're more comfortable if I'm not there.
Yeah. I don't know. It's so easy. It's so ridiculously easy for the rights holder, for Sportsnet to go there.
Yeah.
Not that it much matters because we're all going to be virtually doing everything anyway. But I think that I don't know. Toronto makes too much sense.
Don Cherry can do games again.
I'm still waiting for them to say Vegas is out. I'm waiting for that to come. I think a lot of people. What I feel like is happening right now with Vegas, and I've been in the rumor world for such a long time. This is what happens. Sometimes if you go all in on a rumor, like in Vegas, it was a very strong rumor. Like it was very strong that was going to be the case. I've gotten used to the fact that things change so quickly that I can go all in on a rumor, but say, hey, things change. Some people are always afraid to they went the mainstream media. They go so far into it that they're not going to change until it's actually been eliminated. But I can tell you that Vegas is losing ground. It's not like you can't just sit there and continually say it is the favorite. It's just not anymore. Really, it's back in the pack right now. It really is.
I think they want to announce it probably in the next 3 or 4 days.
We heard it was going to be by Friday, so
right. But the lottery's tomorrow, so
yeah, we'll talk about the lottery tomorrow.
Yeah, I'll bet
maybe on Monday.
Earliest will be Monday.
Probably Monday. Yeah, you're right. All right, guys, that's all the time we have for today. We will be back again tomorrow because that's the way we do things around here, Monday through Friday. Remember, folks, without the buzz, it is just